Intake interview. This tutorial is designed to use both the 13614C and the Wisconsin Information Sheet simultaneously. You will receive a printed training to use along with samples of the Form 13614C and the current year's Wisconsin Information Sheet. You will find notations with an icon of Wisconsin in the instructions and on these screens. That information needs to be entered on the Wisconsin Information Sheet. Simple instructions for Google Voice will follow. Your site coordinator will train each of you on the computer. We will be using Google Voice for the intake specialists to contact our clients. This may sound foreign to some of you, and we have to admit it was foreign to some of us as well. But we have found it to be very easy to use, so no worries. This isn't as difficult as one might imagine. Your site coordinator will train each of you as needed. You will be provided with earphones if you are working from the tax site. You can use this site also from your home to perform the intake interview. Your site coordinator will advise you where to file finished intake forms. Using Google Voice. Each VITA computer will have a link to the Google Voice account set up on the desktop. Each tax site has their own telephone number. On the left, you will find any voicemails that have come in. Your site coordinator will assign one person to check the voicemails and notify the proper person. On the right, you will see a telephone pad. You can use this pad to dial the telephone number using a mouse. You can also click in the box above the keypad and use the numbers on your laptop's keyboard. Part 1, Personal Information. We will now go through the 13614C and Wisconsin Information Sheets. Please put notes anywhere on these sheets because it would help us to know what to look for when doing the tax return. If you are questioning something, chances are the tax preparer and the site coordinator will too. It is better to have too many notes than not enough. Part 1, lines 1 and 2, miscellaneous information. All names must match the Social Security Administration. We must have Social Security cards for everyone on the return. Deceased taxpayers. If the client tells you they have this situation, inform them of the following. We need a copy of the death certificate. A personal representative may be the one filing. We need copies of the court documents or other documentation authorizing them to file the tax return. TaxSlayer requires a telephone number in order to prepare a return. It is also needed for calling regarding rejects or if we need additional information. The IRS will never call the taxpayer. If they are not a United States citizen, the taxpayer needs a green card or must have a substantial presence. Check the following table to be certain they are in scope. This is a copy of the decision chart, and it is also in your packet. You could go right down the steps to find out if the person will qualify for our services or not. Part 1, line 3, mailing address. This is the current mailing address where the IRS will mail the refund or correspondence. This does not have to be a physical address. It can be a post office box. We will use this address for any mailings as well. For TaxSlayer and Wisconsin purposes, we need the county, municipality, school district, and if they lived in Wisconsin for all of the current tax year. Notice the state of Wisconsin icon here. That tells you to enter this information on the Wisconsin information sheet. The numbers on the information sheet will match those on the 13614C. Part 1, lines 4 through 9, date of birth, job titles, and so on. Make sure you check the boxes for either yes or no. Was the taxpayer or spouse totally and permanently disabled, a full-time student, or legally blind? Was the taxpayer or spouse 65 at the end of the tax year? This is for calculating the Wisconsin retirement exclusion. If yes, nothing more needs to be done in this section. Notice the Wisconsin icon again and mark this information on the Wisconsin information sheet. If no, are you or your spouse filing for the homestead credit? If no, nothing more needs to be done. If yes, please see the user-friendly flowchart on the next slide. Here is a flowchart which may assist you in determining if the clients qualify for the homestead credit or not. If they are disabled and filing the homestead credit, they must provide one of the following: a statement from the Veterans Administration certifying they are receiving disability benefits due to 100% disability, or a document from the Social Security Administration stating the date the disability began, or a physician statement indicating the beginning date of the disability and whether the disability is permanent or temporary. Part 1, line 10. Can anyone else claim the taxpayer as a dependent? Check the box for yes or no. Please note, the question is not will anyone else claim them, but can anyone else claim them? If a taxpayer can be claimed, they must answer yes. If they do answer yes, the most common reason to file would be to have the withholding taken out of their checks and they are filing for a refund. They cannot claim a dependent if they are also being claimed as a dependent. Part 1, line 11. Has the taxpayer, spouse, or any dependent been a victim of tax-related identity theft or been issued an identity protection PIN? Check the box for yes or no. If yes, tell the client we must have this number in order to e-file their return. They are able to go to irs.gov and access Get an IP PIN to retrieve this number. If they are unable to provide the IP PIN, we will have to paper file, and this delays their refund. Part 1, line 12. This is a new line this year. Are you able to provide an email address? This is optional. However, explain to the client the email address will not be used for contacts from the IRS, but it will be helpful to us in preparing their taxes. The reason for this is that TaxSlayer has developed a new product called the Customer Portal. This portal will allow the taxpayer and the tax preparer to chat back and forth if they have questions. The taxpayer can also upload any necessary documents either by PDF, by pictures from their cell phones. There's many different ways to upload the documents, and the taxpayer can print out their own return or save it as a PDF. Part 2, marital status and household information, line 1. Review the marital status and confirm that the taxpayer is not divorced in the current tax year, legally separated, married filing separate. These items are out of scope because of the complexity of marital property laws in Wisconsin. Part 2, line 2. Everyone who lived with the taxpayer or anyone they supported needs to be noted here. If they had a new baby in 2021, tell them we will assist them with the additional economic impact payment for the new baby as well as the child tax credit. In cases of divorce, a non-custodial parent may claim a child who does not reside with them. This is allowed by court orders. Fill in the information regarding the child. If no one is living with them, mark none. Ensure that the information is complete and legible. Do not complete the gray section. The tax preparer will do this. Part 3, income, line 1. We must have a W-2 for each job. Write the number of W-2s on this line. If they do not have their W-2, we can do a substitute using the last pay stub. We would have to file this as a paper return, and that will delay their refund. Otherwise, the taxpayer can first contact their employer. Then, if they still can't get it from their employer, they can contact the IRS, but only after February 15th. If the Social Security number is incorrect on the W-2, the taxpayer must get a corrected W-2. We cannot process the return with an incorrect Social Security number. Part 3, lines 2 and 3. Did the taxpayer or spouse receive any tip income or scholarship income? If so, mark the appropriate box. Part 3, line 4. Did the taxpayer or spouse earn any interest or dividends? If yes for interest, we must enter the interest received regardless of whether or not the taxpayer received a 1099 interest. If yes for dividends, see the sample of the 1099 dividend for the codes allowed following on the next screen or the copy in your packet. For your information, patronage dividends are reported on a Form 1099-PATR in Box 1. They are non-taxable if the dividend relates to purchases made for personal use and no entry is required. These are frequently received from electric co-ops. Notice the boxes that are out of scope. Be sure to ask the taxpayer what box or boxes have dollar figures in them and compare it to this sample. Refund of state or local income taxes. Rather ask, did the taxpayer or spouse itemize when they filed their taxes last year? This answer should be no unless they itemized. We see very few clients who itemize. Did the taxpayer or spouse receive alimony? It is called maintenance in Wisconsin. We need documentation of the amount received. If yes, did the payments begin by court order before December 31st, 2019? Mark this answer on the 13614C. Part 3, line 7. Did the taxpayer or spouse have self-employment income? Did they receive a 1099 miscellaneous or a 1099 NEC? If the income is on a 1099 miscellaneous, see the following screen for example of exceptions. The Form 1099 NEC was new in 2020 for income formerly reported as contracted labor. This is considered self-employment income. Notice the boxes that are out of scope. Ask the taxpayer to tell you what boxes have dollar amounts in them and compare it to this sample. Part 3, line 7 continued. Did the taxpayer or spouse run a small business? Make a note in this section and we will include a self-employment worksheet in their mailing. Continue with these questions. In order to qualify, they cannot answer yes to any of the following. Did your business have expenses over $35,000? Did it have a loss in a previous year or a current year? Do you have a home office space? Do you carry an inventory? Do you have paid employees? Do you use a depreciation expense? If they answered yes to any of these, that return is out of scope. Part 3, lines 8 and 9. Did the taxpayer or spouse receive any cash payments? Did they have any income or loss from the sale of stocks, bonds, or real estate, including their home? Only the sale of their main residence is in scope. We will need the closing statement. If they sold something other than stock, mutual funds, or personal residence, such as a vacation home, hunting land, or investment property, the return is out of scope. Part 3, line 10. Did the taxpayer or spouse have any disability income? Typically, this income is on Form 1099-R with a Code 3 disability in Box 7. Sometimes they receive a W-2 from an insurance company. This is not considered disability income from Social Security or SSI. Continue on with these state questions. Did they receive a VA disability payment? Did they receive workers' compensation? If so, mark them on the Wisconsin form. Part 3, lines 11 to 13. Did the taxpayer or spouse receive retirement income other than Social Security? This is usually on a Form 1099-R. Have them look at the 1099-R and tell you what number or letter is in Box 7, and then see the chart in your packet for corresponding codes. Did they receive unemployment? If so, we will need a Form 1099-G. Did they receive Social Security? Did they receive federal or state SSI? You will notice this needs to be marked on the Wisconsin information sheet. Part 3, lines 14 and 15. Did the taxpayer or spouse have income or loss from rental property? Only military returns are in scope for rental income. Make a note on the intake form because we will need to have a preparer with military certification. If they are not in the military, it is out of scope. Did the taxpayer or spouse have any other income, such as gambling winnings, such as scratch-offs, jury duty, and so on? Did they receive court-ordered child support, kinship care, or other public assistance? Did they receive Wisconsin Works payments or county relief payments? Did they receive any other non-taxable income such as military compensation? Did they receive a rent deduction for serving as a resident manager at their apartment complex? Part 4, expenses, lines 1 to 3. Did the taxpayer or spouse pay alimony, or as we call it in Wisconsin, maintenance? If yes, did the payments begin by court order before December 31st of 2019? Please mark that answer on the Form 13614C. We will need documentation of how much they paid either way. Did they make any contributions to a retirement plan besides those made through payroll deduction? Those could be deposits to IRAs or personal contributions to their 401ks. Did they have any educational expenses, such as a 1098-T? If so, has the student completed 4 years of post-secondary education before December 31st of the current tax year? Mark this answer on the 13614C. Finally, on the Wisconsin information sheet, did they pay tuition to any Wisconsin or Minnesota school? Part 4, line 4. Did the taxpayer or spouse pay any medical premiums or expenses out of pocket? If yes, check the box on the Form 13614C and continue with these Wisconsin questions. Did they have Medicare supplemental insurance? Did they purchase health insurance from the marketplace? Did they purchase health insurance non-marketplace, which would include dental or vision? Do they make out-of-pocket payments for Badger Care? Did they purchase long-term care insurance? Part 4, line 4, continued. Did the taxpayer or spouse pay real estate taxes? Did they pay rent on the primary residence? Did they own the home with anyone other than their spouse? This does not include life estates. If yes, what percentage of the home did they own? In other words, how many people owned the home with them? Did they buy anything outside of Wisconsin which was used in Wisconsin and for which no sales tax was charged? Did they make any contributions, whether it be by cash or in donations? Part 4, lines 5 to 8. Did the taxpayer or spouse pay any child or dependent care? Did they pay educator expenses? These are expenses paid by a teacher, instructor, counselor, principal, or aide in a school, not a homeschool, for K through 12 who work at least 900 hours during the school year. Did they have any expenses related to self-employment or other income they received? Did they pay any student loan interest? Part 5, lines 1 through 4, life events. Do the taxpayer or spouse have a health savings account? Did they have credit card debt canceled? Did they adopt a child? Did they receive any letters from the IRS that said they did not qualify for credits they had claimed on their taxes, such as the Earned Income Credit, the Child Tax Credit, or the American Opportunity Credit? If yes, we will want to see the letters if possible and need to know the year. They will remember if they got letters. This is a very hard question for them to understand. If they don't remember getting letters, the answer is probably no. Part 5, lines 5 through 11. Did the taxpayer or spouse purchase and install energy efficient home items in this tax year? Did they receive a first-time homebuyer credit in 2008? Clients will typically know if they did. If they are uncertain what we're talking about, they probably did not. Did they make any estimated payments to the IRS or to the state of Wisconsin? Did they have a federal capital loss carryover? Clients will probably know if they had this or not. If they are unsure, you can ask them, do you typically have capital gains or losses from stock sales? If yes, mark Request 2020 Tax Return on the 13614C. If no, mark No Past Stock Sales on the 13614C. Did they purchase health insurance through the marketplace? If they don't have their 1095A, which we absolutely need, they should call 1-800-318-2596 to have one mailed to them. They can also get that information over the phone. Did they receive the economic impact payment in 2021? Did they receive advanced child tax credit payments in 2021? If they had a new baby in the current tax year, we will be able to help them get the additional amount as well as the child tax credit payment. Make a note to say if they got a payment for their deceased spouse or any other issues you find. Additional information section. Does the taxpayer or spouse have an email address? Something new for this current tax year is called the Customer Portal. This is a great benefit, whereas the customer and tax preparer can chat. The customer will be able to print their own tax return, and they will also have the capability to upload any additional documents needed. Tax preparers will be trained on this portal separately. We will need the email address or a cell phone number that allows text in order for the customer to participate. Did the taxpayer or the spouse wish to contribute to the presidential election campaign fund? Yes or no? Finishing the interview. Do not ask for demographic information on this form. We supply our own form. Follow the handout to explain the consents that will be mailed to them. You may stop the interview process here. Advise the client they will be receiving a mailing letting them know what the procedure for the drop-off is. This mailing will include a checklist of what they need to submit. Once their taxes are finished, they will be called with the results, also known as a final quality review. The final return, along with their submitted documents, will be returned to them. Your site coordinator will advise you as to the next steps for filing this paperwork at the tax site.